It's ready, yeah. Hello. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Shabbat. Yes. If I'm going too fast, just throw something.
No. Listen,
just get up and leave. Yeah, exactly.
Ik ben het gewend. Oh, I'm used to it. It's true. No problem.
Okay.
Some people.
Right. Last time we spoke about the malacha of Choresh. We were doing different things from Hilchos Shabbos, different interesting malachas that don't always get addressed. They don't always get discussed. People always talk about bishul, cooking, and about chopping, or about muksa and different things like that. We don't always talk about the agricultural malachas because they're not as relevant.
Malacha is not English, eh?
No, the agricultural forbidden activities. Yeah. So we spoke last time about choresh, about plowing ground, and different acts that could constitute plowing ground. Today I want to speak to you a little bit about the malacha of zoreah, which is planting. I mentioned last time, recall those who were here, that in some instances people plow before they plant, and in some instances people plant before they plow. The Gemara says that in places where the ground is tough, where the ground is hard, you plow the ground, you have to break the ground up, and then you can put the seeds in. In places where the ground is soft and the seeds easily drop into the ground, then you place the seeds on the ground and you then do the same activity of sort of shuffling the mud in order to allow the earth to cover over the seed. So we spoke about choresh, now we're going to speak a little bit about zoreah. Now, zoreah, planting, we'll speak later about different dimensions of planting. Planting, of course, like all the malachas of Shabbos, it's not limited to just putting a seed in the ground. There's other forms of planting that we'll discuss. But zoreah is a very unusual malacha. It's a very unusual one of the 39 categories of forbidden activity on Shabbos. It totally defies the regular rules of malachas. I'll explain very simply why. Every single one, almost every single one, there's a couple of exceptions, but practically every single one of the 39 activities that are forbidden to do on Shabbos, the activity takes place together with the result of the activity on Shabbos itself. That means, for example, let's take, for argument's sake, the malacha of trapping. Someone trapping an animal on Shabbos. There's let's call it a wasp, a bee, flying around the room. He takes his cup, he overturns his cup over the bee, he traps the bee. He's done an act, the physical act of overturning the cup, trapping the bee, and the result is there. He's trapped the bee. It's instantaneous, it happens on the spot.
Is it allowed?
No.
Not allowed?
No, but we'll talk about bees another time. If it might harm somebody, then trapping a bee might only be an issa drabonon, not an issa d'oraisa. The Torah only forbids trapping animals that are minoi nitzad. That means animals that are of a species that are usually trapped. There's certain species that are trapped for the benefit of the thing that's being trapped. In other words, you trap a deer, yeah, for the skins of the deer or for the meat. You trap what other animals would be? Well, today we don't do much trapping in terms of cows or sheep. Yes. They're already trapped. But the deer is the example that the Gemara brings. You trap a deer for the benefit of the thing itself. Certain animals are commonly trapped. I'll tell you another, a chicken. A person has a chicken running around his garden and the chicken's gone loose. So he traps the chicken to have the chicken back at home for the benefit of what the chicken provides, the hen, the eggs, whatever it is, the chicken itself, etc. There's certain animals, many species of animals that aren't trapped for the benefit of the thing itself. That's called ein b'minoi nitzad. Its species isn't normally trapped. For example, a fly. A fly is not min nitzad. It's not normally trapped for any beneficial purpose. Trapping something that's not normally trapped is only a drabonon, not a d'oraisa. Can't be over a drabonon when you trap something that's not normally trapped. If you trap a spider, it's a drabonon, not a d'oraisa. A wasp is a drabonon, not a d'oraisa. So different animals over. There's a machlokas about bees, if they're d'oraisa drabonon, if a bee is called min nitzad or not. Because on the one hand, bees are normally trapped. Yes, not okay. There's a machlokas about. There's a discussion, but for now, so that was sod. So most malachas. Let's get back to the thing. Most malachas that a person performs, he performs the act, and the result of the act, what he's trying to achieve, is instantaneous. It happens on the spot. Some malachas have a very slight delay. Of note, bishul, cooking. Cooking is a malacha that has a delay. He takes a pot, puts some water in it, some carrots and onions and chicken, and he puts it on the fire, on the heating element. It takes a certain amount of time for the result of cooking to take place. What happens, for argument's sake, if a person takes a pot, fills it with all the various cooking ingredients, puts it onto the fire on Shabbos, realizes it's Shabbos, and removes it straight away from the fire? Has he done the malacha d'oraisa, the forbidden activity according to Torah law of cooking on Shabbos?
No.
The answer is no, he hasn't. He saved himself in time because he hasn't cooked. In order to cook something, Chazal stipulated that the heat, the temperature of the thing that you're cooking has to at least get to Yadsei Ledesboy, to the temperature which a person's hand is singed, not singed, actually burned, but like a person immediately removes their hand when touching it. In other words, the hand is scalded by the hot water. That's the minimum requirement, minimum temperature of the ingredient need to get to that temperature. And then it needs to be some kind of sustained activity at that temperature. It has to be that the food at that temperature and beyond continues to change, so to speak, to go through this chemical changes that take place when you cook. And as a result, cooking takes place. It takes a certain amount of time, depending on what you're cooking, depends on how long it takes, how big the pot is, etc., how big the fire is, all these different things. If you remove the pot before it's got to that stage of being cooked in any form, you've done nothing wrong, min Torah, by Torah law. You have transgressed a drabonon, because the rabbis forbade you to put the pot even on the fire for a moment, because it's an act that looks like the act of cooking, as you would understand, because the act of cooking always begins with putting the food on the heat source. So they said you can't in any instance put the food back on the heat source unless there's certain conditions, which is where we speak about Chazorah. Okay, yeah.
No, I have to look. No. I have to take it. No.
Unless there's certain conditions, etc., etc. But basically, it would be a drabon. You've transgressed a rabbinical law of putting the pot onto the fire on Shabbos, but you haven't done a d'oraisa. Why? Because it takes a certain amount of time for the food to get cooked. Cooking.
So, what is more important, the Torah or the Rabbanon?
The Mishnah in Adias, it said, 1 second. The Mishnah says, that from a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Arev Molai Divrei Soifrim Yosem Yena Shel Torah. It's more sweet, the words that the rabbis told us, than the Torah itself. What's more important? The Torah. Nothing can be as important as the Torah. When the rabbis instituted any kind of rabbinic prohibition, they always had to make sure that it's clear, it's absolutely transparent, that they're not trying to add on to the Torah. They're trying to safeguard the establishment of the Torah itself, but not to add further, because you're not allowed to add on the Torah. You can't add anything onto the Torah. The Torah is perfect. Torah is Hashem Tamima. Torah is absolutely perfect. There's no room to add or subtract from it. So what the rabbis did in thousands of instances, not just a few, but in thousands and thousands of instances, is they added safeguarding prohibitions, gezeras, onto to preserve the Torah. But in order to make it clear that it's not the same, they said it's not min Torah, it's midrabanon, and midrabanon and min Torah have lots of different practical differences between them. For example, you can't bring a person wouldn't bring a korban in the time of Beis Hamikdash. If a person transgresses one of the 39 melachas accidentally, he brings a korban, an offering. Can't bring an offering for transgressing a drabonon. Cannot bring an animal into the Beis Hamikdash transgressing the drabonon. Absolutely no way. In fact, if he does bring an offering into the Beis Hamikdash transgressing the drabonon, he's over Issa d'oraisa. He's transgressed another Torah transgression of bringing chulin, bringing a non-kedusha animal, a non-holy animal, a non-consecrated animal into the Beis Hamikdash. Korban Torah, the Drabonon is Drabonon. But what's nicer, what's better? The Mishnah says the Drabonon is better than the Torah. What does that mean? I'll leave you to think about it.
So,
It's even more complicated.
Yeah. If you know the context of the Mishnah, it's even more interesting. The Mishnah says, I think it's the Mishnah in ADS. The Mishnah says, why did they forbid? One rabbi in the Mishnah asked the other Mishnah, why did they forbid? I can't remember which one it is. One of the various foods that Chazal said you shouldn't eat if it's food of a non-Jew. Certain things that they forbid. Well, non-Jewish wine is minator and midrabanon. Oil at one stage was forbidden. Bread was forbidden. Cooked food of a non-Jew that's fit to be served in a banquet is also forbidden. Bishul Akum, I think it was Bishul Akum. I don't recall offhand. It says, why did they forbid whatever it was that they forbade? Again, I don't remember. So he didn't want to answer him on the spot. The Mishnah says a very interesting Mishnah says, didn't want to answer him. So Masio Ladova Acher, he changed the topic, and he said to him, there's a posuk in Shir Hashirim, Song of Song, says, Tovim doidecha miyayin. Yeah, Tovim doidecha, your bosom, your breasts are nicer than wine, the posuk in Shir Hashirim. The Shlomo Melech is obviously referring allegorically to the relationship between the Jewish people and Hashem and various different interpretations of the posuk, but that's what the posuk says. He asked him, like a kind of yekish or dikduk question, to completely change the topic. He said, is it doidecha or doidayich? Doidayich is the feminine form of doidecha. Doidecha is the masculine, doidayich is the feminine. He said, is it tovim doidecha miyayin, that your bosoms in the masculine form are nicer than wine, or is it tovim doidayich miyayin, which has absolutely no relationship whatsoever? And so the Gemara goes into this long discussion to explain that he was hinting at him not to mock rabbinical concepts. Because he asked him, why did they forbid this and this? Why did the rabbis forbid this? So he changed the topic cleverly and planted the seed in his Talmud's mind that tovim doidecha miyayin, that the things that the rabbis said were nicer than wine. And the Gemara understands why doidecha is a reference to the rabbis, and yayin is yayin shel Torah, which is a reference to the Torah. It's a nice, interesting fight. We've gone completely off the topic, but either way, just to throw something completely random out there. Bishul, we said, takes time. It takes time to cook. Yeah? However, generally speaking, one can assume that since Shabbos is 25 hours long, 26 hours long, whatever, 25 hours long, it takes less than the amount of time of Shabbos to cook food. In other words, if you put food on the stove earlier on Shabbos, it will probably have cooked by the time Shabbos finishes. It's possible to put food on the stove 5 minutes before the end of Shabbos, and it doesn't cook until Shabbos is finished. It's possible. But generally speaking, the malacha of cooking, the act of cooking, both the act and the result happen on Shabbos. Even though we just said there's a time delay between the action, putting the food on the stove, and the result, cooking, but nonetheless, it's mostly likely in normative circumstances that they will still both happen on Shabbos. Will happen on Shabbos. However, Zoreah, planting, is the most unusual one of the malachas, because Chazal told us that it takes 3 days, 3 full days, for a seed to begin to take root in the ground. If you take an apple seed, you eat the apple and you have the pit, the seed, and you put it on the ground, you come back a day later, nothing visible has happened. It may, of course, at any given moment, there's a breakdown of molecules or whatever, but there's nothing visible that's taken place. In no way has the seed taken root in the ground. What is the action of Zoreah? To plant a seed. By definition, you can never plant a seed on Shabbos, and the result that it takes place will be on Shabbos, by definition. Zoreah is the only one of the malachas that will never be both the action and the result within 25 hours. And so it's a very unusual malacha, because effectively what the Torah is telling you is you can't plant a seed on Shabbos for the seed to take root on Monday. What's Monday? Monday isn't Shabbos. Monday's Monday. You can plant the seed on Monday. What's the difference if it happens on Monday? The Torah is being mechadash, so to speak. It's telling us a novel idea in the form that Chazal explained, that one of the 39 categories of malacha is planting. We therefore learn that even though taking root takes 3 days, minimum 3 days to take root, nonetheless, you're still not allowed to plant a seed on Shabbos. So it's unusual, different. It's a completely different case, different form of melacha to any of the other 38 melachas. So now I want to ask you a question. What happens if you take a seed on Thursday and you plant it and it takes root on Shabbos? Have you done?
Some people don't cut their nails on Thursday.
Very good,
because
very
it will grow on Shabbos. I never understood it.
It's very, very interesting. The last time I spoke at this concept with a group of people, it was, I think, half a year ago, so I was telling some people, someone asked the exact same question about the nails, cutting nails. I'll tell you about the nails in a second. Don't worry too much about the nails. If a person, let's answer the question, so the question, remind me about the nails. Yeah, remind me. Person plants a seed on Thursday morning, well, let's say Wednesday to be precise. Wednesday, day 3 is Shabbos morning. Has he transgressed the Torah prohibition of planting because the seed took root on Shabbos?
No.
Why do you say no? Good.
Because he did it on Wednesday.
Because he did it on Wednesday. It's absolutely impossible to consider an action being a transgression of Shabbos that doesn't happen on Shabbos. You can't transgress Shabbos on a Wednesday. By the way, there's also what to discuss about transgressing Shabbos on a Wednesday. There is a halacha, Reish Mem Ches, Siman Reish Mem Ches, 248 in Shulchan Aruch, that you can't, a person in the olden days, they left on a boat, on a ship, and it would travel several days. Ein mafligen besfina, you can't travel on a ship, you can't leave the port from a Wednesday onwards. Within 3 days of Shabbos, he's got to worry about Shabbos. That doesn't mean he's transgressed Shabbos. It means he has to start to worry about the possibility of being on a ship on Shabbos. And remember, in the olden days, maybe still today, but only if you were a sailor, if you were one of the workers, but not the normative passenger.
Well,
in the old...
Amerika ging altijd Shabbos weg. Koffers werden aan boord gebracht op vrijdag.
You have to... I'm
sorry.
See, if you say it slowly in Dutch, I might understand, like I speak slowly in English.
It used to be that the ships, if disembarked from the Netherlands towards the US,
America.
Yeah, they left on Shabbat. What happened is that those people who wanted to go brought their suitcases and so on as if they embarked already on Friday,
and then they didn't embark on Shabbos.
and so they didn't embark on Shabbat.
There is
another question also in this halachic stuff on embarking on 2 villages who have together a minyan and are on both sides of a river.
Yeah.
And there is a ferry in between. And whether they are allowed to enter, whether they are allowed to enter on Shabbat, to go to the
mitzvah.
So the answer is they are allowed if it's clear that they are not going to the market, but it's clear that they are going to with their Shabbos clothes on, etc.
To do a mitzvah.
And they paid in advance, etc., etc.
Het is in Grijpketen.
Yeah, it was like, yeah,
it's by boat.
Yeah,
they had these.
Holland.
Yeah. Going by boats on a river is not as bad as by boat on the sea. Yeah, in Halacha, in the river. But
that's the hele weer.
Yeah. So if you plant a seed, again back to if you plant a seed on Wednesday, you cannot be over. You cannot transgress a Torah transgression if you do an action.
But you don't ask for it to be it exactly on Shabbat.
You don't know.
You don't. When you see you plant it on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, you don't ask. You don't want it to be specifically on that day.
It's true. It's fair enough, but you don't. Even if it would be absolutely guaranteed that taking root, whatever the rabbis decide is the stage where it takes root, the first root would emerge from the seed, would crack out the seed into the soil around it on Shabbos, it still would be absolutely fine. Because you can't, Shabbos is the 7th day of the week, it's day 7. You cannot transgress one of the 39 categories of malachas on a Wednesday or on a Thursday or on a Friday. It's not possible. The Torah doesn't talk about transgressions. Every malacha of Shabbos has to have an action. The Torah is not punishing you, so to speak, entirely for something happening, nothing to do with you. The Torah punishes you for the act, punishes. I don't like to use the word punishes, but the transgression is for the action, and the action has to take place on Shabbos. So it's absolutely clear that if you don't have the action on Shabbos, there's nothing to talk about. So that way round, if you plant on Wednesday and it takes root on Shabbos, nothing to talk about, absolutely fine. Like you can turn your time switch on Friday for the lights to go on and off all of Shabbos, no problem. As long as you don't do anything on Shabbos, you haven't done an act of any malacha on Shabbos, you've not done anything wrong.
How do you know the seed takes roots on Shabbos?
That's kind of what our friend was asking before,
you have to crave the ground.
Yeah. If the seed is submerged in the soil, and the soil is of the right moisture, then presumably, then Chazal said that the minimum is 3 days. The minimum, except I'll tell you later, a different case where it could be less than 3 days, but the minimum is 3 days. You're right that depending on how hard the seed is, depends on when it breaks open. The inside stone of a plum or of apricots, these things probably take longer to crack open, depending on how ripe it is, depending on all these different factors. But the minimum is 3 days. But I'm saying to you, even if you knew that this seed was going to take root in 3 days from now, even if you knew, so you're saying you don't know anyway, it's fine, fair enough. But even if you knew it would take root within 3 days, you still would have done nothing wrong, because you've not done an action on Shabbos that's transgression of the laws of Shabbos. You have to do an action on Shabbos to transgress, not in the weekday. The weekday is not Shabbos.
Shabbos clock.
Yeah, the Shabbos clock, yeah, the time switch, the Shabbos clock. The weekday is not Shabbos. We do this the whole time. You can put a pot on the stove on Erev Shabbos before Shabbos in order to cook when Shabbos comes in, to continue cooking when Shabbos comes in, as long as you don't cook on Shabbos. There's a different prohibition. There's a rabbinical prohibition that the food has to be partially cooked, so you don't come to stoke the fire. But that's a separate thing. It's not because of the Torah law of cooking. Torah law of cooking, 5 minutes before Shabbos, you could put your pot on the stove and it cooks when Shabbos comes in. You've done nothing wrong. You have to do an action on Shabbos to transgress the laws of Shabbos. But let's talk about the other way around. Let's say a person planted a seed on Shabbos, and then he removed it within 3 days. So we spoke about the cooking before. We said, if I put a pot on the fire, I don't let it, and I did something wrong. I did the action of cooking, which is put the pot on the fire, but then I removed it before the food got hot. And everyone said before, you've not done the action of cooking, even though you did the act, but the malacha requires 2 parts, the act and the result. You've done the act of cooking, which is to put on the thing, but you've not allowed the result to happen. So you saved yourself, kind of thing, before the result took place, in which case you've not done a malacha. By planting, what happens if you plant the seed and then a day later you save yourself by removing the seed from the ground? It's a very abstract theoretical problems that we're dealing with, but we have to define malachas. We have to define the parameters of what is forbidden. What zireh is so unusual because it takes 3 days. So now we have this question that we don't have by any of the other malachas, by any of the other forbidden activities. Can you save yourself within the 3-day period by removing the seed from the ground? And this is a machloikas between the Minchas Chinuch and the Minchas Chinuch on the one hand, and others together with him, and the Rashash and the Aruch HaShulchan on the other hand. The Rashash and Aruch HaShulchan say that, like by cooking, the Rashash was a early Achron, I don't remember his name, an early Achron. That means in about 300-400 years, I think, that wrote a commentary on the Gemara. On the back of the Gemara, it's found the back of many Gemaras. The Minchas Chinuch was someone called Rav Babad, who wrote a famous book, the Minchas Chinuch, that is a general analysis of all the mitzvahs in the Torah. It surrounds the Sefer Chinuch. The Sefer Chinuch was written by one of the Rishonim, from the medieval period. We don't know exactly. There's a big discussion who it was, who the author is. Some say the Razor or Zrachia Halevi, but different opinions who it was. But the Minchas Chinuch wrote, it is technically speaking in some form a commentary on the Sefer Chinuch, but it's a much more expanded commentary. In other words, he just goes into detail about the technical discussions of every mitzvah and the parameters of the mitzvah. And in Hilchos Shabbos, when Torah speaks about Shabbos, he goes on for pages and pages and pages to analyze each of the 39 malachas, each one of the 39 forbidden activities. So the Minchas Chinuch says, so let's start the other way around. The Rashash says that like cooking, you can save yourself by removing the pot before it's done. Same with planting. Exactly the same with planting. You can save yourself. Like we see from cooking, it's possible to save yourself. From planting, it must be also possible to save yourself. You've done something that you shouldn't do. You put the seed on the ground, but you saved yourself in good time before the seed could take root. Good. You've not transgressed a Torah law by the fact that you saved yourself. The Minchas Chinuch says it's different to cooking. Minchas Chinuch says, which is what I hinted at before, by the fact that planting always has to take 3 days, minimum 3 days, the Torah has revealed to us that in this instance, the act is significant enough to be liable to transgress without the result. Every other malacha, because the result can take place on Shabbos, cooking it can take place on Shabbos, trapping it does take place on Shabbos, inevitable, happens instantaneously, because the result takes place always on Shabbos, or can take place, let's say, on Shabbos. So therefore, it needs to have both the action and the result to be liable. But because planting, it never happens that the result happens on Shabbos. So therefore, what was the Torah bothered by? How could the Torah come along and tell us that you can't plant on Shabbos if you've actually never, ever done anything wrong? You've never done anything creative when you put a seed in the ground on Shabbos, because nothing is created until 3 days later. By the fact that the Torah nonetheless still told us that there is a forbidden activity called planting. If the Torah hadn't said it, I wouldn't have guessed it. If the Torah hadn't told us that there's a forbidden activity called planting, I would have said it's not possible to do planting, to have planting as one of the 39 categories of Melacha. Why is it not possible? Because you've done nothing wrong on Shabbos. The fact that the Torah revealed, so to speak, that the rabbis revealed that planting is one of the 39 Melachas, and bearing in mind that planting always, the action that happens is 3 days before the result, and therefore the result will never be on Shabbos. And yet they still said, with all that, they still said, contrary to what you might have assumed, they said that you have transgressed when you plant. This demonstrates that what are you transgressing? The action, not the result. He's got a very, as he's saying, it's such an unusual case that the uniqueness of planting demonstrates that you're actually not done anything with the result, but it's the action alone, just the action, as a standalone thing, just putting the seed in the ground, that makes you liable.
There is a famous saying that many people did trades in shul on Shabbos talking about money. And for sure, it wasn't paid on money. It was paid on Sunday or later. So is it the same that they are not allowed to talk? It's because it's plenty of money.
You're not to talk. You're not allowed to talk in shul.
Yeah, okay.
No,
It means in the Kiddush. The
oh, the Kiddush.
Whatever. So is that considered planting also?
If you know the money.
If you snore money.
Yeah, there's a shul.
Yeah,
you tell the amount.
You're promising.
Mentioning. Mentioning.
Maar er zijn shoes waar je het bedrag doet.
Ja, precies. En
Yeah.
dan wil ik het in een papiertje.
But what you're saying is halfway to the answer to ask the question. I'll explain why. But
Okay.
he said not allowed to mention that. He said about mentioning the amount. Why is it forbidden? Why is Mekach, why is business forbidden on Shabbos? It's not forbidden by Torah law. It's forbidden rabbinically. There's two reasons. One of them is because we have this pasuk that says, I thought you were about to say it, but he said you're not allowed to talk in shul.
Yeah, okay.
I thought you were about to say you're not allowed to talk about business. The pasuk in the Novi says we lane it the Haftarah of Yom Kippur morning, if I'm not mistaken. In Toshiv Mishabbos Raglecha, people say it before Kiddush on a Shabbos morning. We don't, but some think the Chasidim, the Yekas don't, the Chasidim do. In Toshiv Mishabbos Raglecha, Asois Chafotzecha B'Yom Kodshi. If you will refrain from Shabbos, the normal things you do, Asois Chafotzecha B'Yom Kodshi, from performing your activities on my holy day, the Karosol Shabbos Oineg L'Doitom Chobad B'Chibadatoy Me'asois Rachecha Mimtzoy Chevz Chavadavadam B'Chibadatoy. You honor Shabbos Me'asois Chafotzecha. No, I'm going to talk a little bit slower. Thank you for the hint. The Apostle says you honor it from not doing your business, from which basically also means from engaging in your chafetzim, your workday things, and from speaking. So when Paul said you're not allowed to speak in shul, I thought he was about to say you're not allowed to speak the whole of Shabbos, because the Pasuk says you refrain from speaking. The daber dova, don't speak. That's what the Novi says. You don't speak on Shabbos. So what does it mean you don't speak on Shabbos? It doesn't mean you can't speak on Shabbos. It means you can't speak about business, can't speak about things that are related to weekday activities. The daber dova, shei diburcha shelo yehei diburcha Shabbos. The Gemara says your discussions, the conversations on Shabbos should not be kediburcha b'choil, like your conversations in the weekday. Learn from, it's not just a rabbinical thing from the time of the Talmud or the Mishnah. This is learned from a pasuk in the Novi. The Novi was clearly telling people to make sure that even the conversations that they have on Shabbos should be of a different nature to the conversations they have in the weekday. From that, we learn that you can't talk about commerce on Shabbos. But that's one dimension of business. Another dimension of business, which has nothing to do with talking, is that Chazal forbade transactions on Shabbos. They said you can't do transaction because you might come to write. Because writing is part of the process of transactions. As people write a document, they sign. Writing, or into nowadays, could be many other malachas that take place in the sphere, in the world of transactions. Today, it could be electronic devices. It's even more extended than just writing. Once upon a time, it was writing. I lend you money, I write. You buy an item, we write a receipt. Today, it's pressing a button, the machine prints out the receipt, but it's only got worse, not better. Business involves malachas. Even though the actual act of me giving you a cup and you giving me money is not a doiraisa, bearing in mind that money is muksa, but muksa is rabbinical, it's not min haTorah. So the act of me giving you a cup and you trading it for something else, well, let's make it even easier. Let's say we trade two things. Forget money, we barter. You want a cup, and I want your book. A book isn't muksa. So we barter a cup, we trade a cup for a book. If we do such a thing, no one's touched anything that's muksa, no one's touched anything that's been, but we've traded. And we might now write down, I sold you a cup, you sold me a book, etc., etc. And so Chazal forbade business because it might come to a form of malacha like writing. So we have two reasons why business is forbidden. One of them is the conversation of business is already forbidden. And the other thing is that transactions are forbidden. There's any kind of transaction. For that reason, in answer to your question, it wouldn't make a difference when actual transfer of goods takes place, because just the conversation of let's do business is already v'daber dova, is already conversations of a weekday manner that have not the Shabbos. A practical example of that would be today. Today it's. I'll get to the doc. Is everyone okay? Yeah. Shall I go slower? A little. No problem. I'm sorry. No problem. Once upon a time, the marketplace was open. Yeah, on Shabbos. Now, okay, today I suppose it is as well. Not like the kosher shops aren't open on Shabbos, and you can't normally buy things anymore unless it's by a friend. You can't buy on credit today, and that you can't go to the Albert Heijn and say I'll pay you back tomorrow or whatever, that kind of thing.
Only Jewish shops.
Only Jewish shops, yeah, only Jewish shops. But once upon a time, the market was open, and it was a non-Jew working in his stall selling his eggs or whatever, selling oil, I don't know, whatever they were selling. Spices, and you ran out of eggs on Shabbos. Eggs is a bit of a silly example because there's nothing really much you can do with an egg on Shabbos, so you can't cook it. But
You
let,
can eat it.
you can eat it. So you ran out. Let's say you ran out of some spices, whatever, some salt. So you went to the shopkeeper, and he said to him, "You wanted to buy some whatever." Now you can't give him money on Shabbos, smokes whatever. So you want to tell him to give me some salt, and I'll pay you after Shabbos. It's fair enough. Is it simple? Is it okay? Is that okay? Give me some salt. I'll pay you back after Shabbos. The halacha says, as long as you don't mention any word that has a relationship with business. For example, weight, the amount of weight, a kilo has a relationship with transaction because the kilo represents a kilo, 500 grams, 200, anything in weight, or anything to do with number, 5 eggs, numbers have a relationship with money, or anything to do with coins. You just say, can I have some salt? And the person knows, he trusts you that you're paying back. Then it's permitted on Shabbos. Why is it permitted? Because you've not mentioned, you've not spoken about non-Shabbos activities, and you've not engaged you're not actually engaged in a transaction per se.
No, but on Shabbos we call 7 people on the by the balcony.
For money.
Jamie,
Ja, no.
Sisi.
Ja.
It's short.
Nou, zo wat.
But that's not business. It's not
It's not
business.
business.
Money, you're allowed to talk about numbers. I can say to you, I've got here 5 cups. It's numbers in connection with transaction. That's what we mean. Sorry to not be clear. That they don't want you to talk about a discussion that has to do with transactions. So I said, if you need to get food off the shopkeeper, you go to him, you say, can I have some salt? After Shabbos will settle, you're not meant to mention the weight, amounts, weights, numbers, coins, nothing like that. Actually, a few weeks ago, we had in Kal Chassidim, a few weeks ago, Penny came to me and he said that he completely forgot to pick up the fish, the herring, from the fish shop behind by the jumbo there, whatever, by the yeah. He forgot to pick up the fish, but he said it's definitely all ready because they had it ready on Friday. They probably put it in the fridge, and he hasn't picked it up yet. What can he do? So I said to him that as long as you don't need to mention anything to do with money or anything to do with amount, you just say, I've come for the order and I'll of course, if you trust me, I'll come back tomorrow.
Was already paid? It was paid?
No,
No,
it
no,
wasn't
no,
paid,
no,
nothing.
no.
No, wasn't paid. Then I said, and then you're allowed to take food, the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to take food off the shopkeeper on Shabbos, obviously under the circumstances that you don't, he trusts you and you don't have to discuss money.
Yeah.
But I said
You also allowed to have the shopkeeper
bring the food, yeah. I was more concerned about, I was far more concerned about just the Maris Ayin, that there's many Jews in Amsterdam who might not be involved so much in the Shabbos, and that they'll see someone going into a shop.
He does it, then I guess, yeah. I think it is allowed.
So I told him no. So I told him that I said to him that he shouldn't go in the front. I said he should knock on the back, which if anyone sees you knocking on the back, it doesn't look like the normal way of buying something. No one has ever knock on. They have the back. It's like a little booth. So knock on the back, go around the back, knock on. Tell them what you came for. He said they know him. They know him from the past. Whatever, Penny.
Can you send the code?
Ik had dan kind.
Yes, but I think that
It's not good.
I think that if it looks like something forbidden, then what difference does it make who does it? If someone sees a 9-year-old boy doing something forbidden and he thinks that therefore you're allowed to go to the shops on Shabbos, then it's Maris Ayin. You've done something. So I said that you're not actually Machal Shabbos, but you've made you've given you've given an impression to others and they might think that you can be Machal Shabbos, that you can shop on Shabbos.
Times when it's more done. 30, 50 years ago, we had a kruidenier.
Is more suspicious.
Herman heeft een keer gezegd.
No, say it's hell.
Something like Albert and kruidenier.
Grocery.
Grocery. and we knew the lady. So sometimes on Yom Tov, once my wife forgot eggs. So if you come from shul, ask her for a few of eggs.
Same
After Yom Tov. And the lady knew about it.
Yes,
There were
Yom
many
Tov.
Jews and
But he's saying something good. That's
It's Yom
exactly
Tov.
what's bothering our friend at the back, on the back benches, is that the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
As I said, in the case that you don't mention, I said weight,
Yeah.
money, these things you're allowed to, and the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that it's Maris Ayin, that it looks like you don't. It doesn't say I invented me Stanton came along and radicalized and invented Maris Ayin. Why? Very simple, because exactly like you just said,
Yeah.
because it used to be far more common.
Yeah.
You can't go anymore to Albert Heijn and buy on trust and credit. Everything's become very global, very commercialized, very industrialized. There's far fewer traders, unless it's like on the Albert Kite market. Maybe there's people you pass them every day, whatever. But the commercial, the nature of buying foods and buying groceries there's no longer the same informality and personal touch and personal trust. There is, for sure, it exists, but less than it used to. So the Shulchan Aruch was never worried about Maris Ayin, because in the time of the Shulchan Aruch, until, like you said, even until recent times, and I'm sure until today, but it was much more common to just go to the shopkeeper.
I cannot go to Albert Heijn and ask for
Exactly, you can't.
And
so
so
it's now-
something 50 years ago I learned when you have meaty and you use almond meal,
Yeah.
then you should notice it. But today, parva milk is so common.
Exactly. In that sense, Maris Ayin, giving over a bad impression, changes according to the circumstances. Today, if you walk into Jumbo, the shop Jumbo on Shabbos, Jumbo, okay, forget the electric door, you're right, the electric doors. Assuming you walk in, nobody thinks for a second that you're going to buy on credit. No one. If you were just walking in on Shabbos,
Zelfs als openbaar vervoer gratis is.
again, which means
When public transport is free,
when public, yeah.
like it used to be in Delft.
Then you jumped
On
on,
Shabbat, you can go on
you jumped on and jumped
Except-
off. Yeah,
for the first step.
yeah. You jumped on and you jumped off.
Yeah.
So when do you pay that?
Before
You don't pay
Shabbat.
public tax. You don't pay at all.
Not even later.
No, not
Yeah.
even later. So
Maybe
it's
that's
free. It's completely free.
It's completely.
It was in Delft. It was a few Shabbatot. It was completely free.
It's completely free.
Yeah. So
You don't have to
that
pay for
everybody
it.
knows it's free, and it's not high time,
Yeah.
and it's traveling there, and as long as it doesn't stop just for you.
It's an intro.
Yeah.
It's an intro.
Yeah.
In the few years, we cannot go to the shop. Everything goes.
Yeah, everything, yeah. But the fish shop is somewhere in between. Because it's like
that's
it
well-
goes more.
It goes in
Two
bol.com.
people to that store instead of one. So two people from shul, they are recognizable. They are Choshiva people from the shul. They know they can never transfer it. Trespass the Shabbos. Two people, not one. And you said, okay, from shul, that should be okay. What's the difference between one person,
Listen,
and 2 persons, or 3 persons for our Marathon?
I invented
Yeah, I
this
understand.
Maris Ayin.
I understand.
I invented it because I
Yeah.
felt that it was
It could
a
be.
worthwhile. It didn't jeopardize him being able to get it. It was a worthwhile barrier, just in case walking past the fish shop, whatever, is a Jew who might not look Jewish. In other words, I'm not worried about me thinking that Penny Rabba buys from shops on Shabbos.
No.
It's Ayn Rand, yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm worried about somebody shopping, walking past, someone seeing Penny Rabba, a visibly Jewish guy, standing in the queue in the fish shop for his fish on Shabbos, where people pay and with his capital on, etc. So I thought to myself, not because it's explicitly written in Shulchan Aruch, but because I thought that if we can avoid that kind of precedent, that God forbid someone shouldn't get. By the way, Maris Ayin has 2 dimensions. There's 2 dimensions of Maris Ayin. One dimension of Maris Ayin is that you don't want someone to learn bad, to do bad from your actions. And the other dimension is that you aren't allowed, people don't realize this, V'yisem nikiyim me'Hashem Yisrael, the Pasuk says, and you should look innocent. The Gemara says you're not allowed to do something that might make people think that you're doing something wrong, even if they won't learn from you, even if that person won't ever go ahead and do it, but nobody should be allowed to suspect you. The Gemara in Brocha says that Hannah had no children. The story of Hannah in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, she had no children, and she was davening in the Beis Hamikdash, and Eli HaKohen, Roshana Torah, and Eli HaKohen saw her davening, and he thought she was drunk. And she said, no, your maidservant is not drunk. The Bible says, she says, no, but I'm not drunk, but I'm crying for children. So the Gemara says, why did she say I'm not drunk? To tell him, you've thought you were choshud me, you suspected me. If someone suspects someone, they're obligated to make it clear that they didn't do the thing they did. Just because you know you're innocent, you have an obligation to tell. You're supposed to look, a person is supposed to, their actions that they do is supposed to not just be correct, but also appear correct. So it's important. We worry for each other. We live in a community. We have to appear correct.
Als je een kwart voor 8 gaat, when you would have gone on 7:45 in the mornings.
Yeah.
Out of regular business hours.
Earlier on, yeah, maybe, yeah. Like I said, I invented this problem because of that's exactly. I was concerned that it looks strange. Someone queuing up, so I said we can avoid it easily. Knock on the back. I first told him to ask a guy, someone passed back, can you pick up wood? But he said it wouldn't work. So I said, knocking on. No one buys via the back door. You obviously have some kind of relationship via the back door.
That was suspicious.
Yes, it looks like drugs, but I don't mind if it looks like drugs, as long as it doesn't look like he's buying on Shabbos.
So what we
I have the scootmobile on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Maar you're a
If the
specialist in
battery
headset.
dies, I can ask a guy to change it.
Yeah.
But still, it looks like I'm changing it myself. But I have no choice then.
Yeah. When they don't see you, no one sees you changing it.
No.
And no one knows the battery died in the first place. You know the battery died. It's not unless we literally like driving down the
Could be in
street
Shul.
and then suddenly like you just
In Shul there. If you go to the Obrecht,
Yeah.
and maybe you have to change them.
Yeah.
how long does the battery
Normally
die?
it does 20
20 kilometers. So you charge it before Shabbos.
Nobody.
Sometimes, for some reason, it dies on the way.
And what do they do? How do they change? You have another spare
I
battery.
have a spare battery. I ask a manager to change it.
But it doesn't look like you're changing. It looks like a non-Jew's changing. If someone comes, they see a non-Jew changing.
Can't do it by himself.
And we've gone very nicely on topic. No, it's fine.
what about the spider?
The trapping
Oh,
spider.
oh, the spider.
Rabbi, we're going to talk about trapping in a few years from now.
You can put a couple of it.
No, the spider not, 'cause it's not dangerous unless it's a
The
dangerous.
wasp is dangerous. The wasp is dangerous. The bees, the spiders are dangerous.
Je kunt niet op Shabbos
Let them.
bestellen en
And the
zeggen.
mosquito.
Mosquitoes can be.
If it is dangerous to you,
Je kan een vaste afspraak maken dat als ik het vrijdagmiddag niet om 6 uur niet haal,
aandacht voor de leraar hebben. Ja, dankjewel.
We're going to
Ja,
cover.
nou, dat moet stil zijn.
We can cover the whole of Shas, the full Talmud, just to get back to Zereah planting. But honestly, I genuinely think Hilchos Shabbos is very, very. Because it's so relevant. It's once every 7 days, and there's so many thousands, millions of practical places it applies. You get lost in Hilchos Shabbos.
Planting. What about spitting out and the pits of, let's say, an apple or whatever on soil
On soil.
on Shabbat?
Ja,
Problem.
die doet toch niks.
It says you do nothing.
No.
Yeah, the act of
Doe
planting.
niks.
The act of planting is to put a seed onto soft soil.
Yeah. Okay. It's let's say it's a in the dustbin. Let's say in my regular dustbin, or on my way to shul, I spit it out on soil.
No, on soil is forbidden. You can't spit.
soil.
Like you can't.
When I do this
You can't
in
accidentally
my dustbin where there are all kind of, let's say,
It's gonna.
coffee stuff. How you say it is coffee. What's this? I say feeding for plants. You use it for feeding plants.
The compost.
Mess, yeah.
Mess,
Compost
compost.
is
Yeah.
in the
In the bin,
dustbin.
in the bin. That's very good.
And I spit my apple.
On purpose.
No, not
Yeah,
on
no,
purpose.
no,
I
you need to-
clean my table. And I put it there.
But in the dustbin,
Just
I
plant
also
it.
mix milk and meat.
It's saying in the dustbin, it's possible for things to start to begin to take root in
Yeah,
the
and it
dustbin.
takes 3 days. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And it's an
I
excellent
I
surrounding.
think that the environment that we spoke about planting, we spoke about the act, we spoke about the result. We also need to speak about the context, the environment of
Yes.
the environment. Now, intention is a good point, but intention, if you don't intend
Er
to
was
a
geen
malacha, you could still have done
Er was
something
geen
wrong.
geweest.
Dovashed, yeah, but Dovashed Vischavan is only not intending a malacha. It's only permitted if it's not inevitable that the malacha will occur. As soon as it's inevitable, if you don't intend to do a malacha, but it's inevitable a malacha will happen, you've done a malacha. That's a rule. So in other words, so if let's say theoretically you have a dustbin and it's inevitable, assuming it would be inevitable that the seed would take root, would start to break down and open up in the dustbin.
Because I changed my dustbin each 3 days.
Right. And it would happen, but it continues when you pull it down into the bins, and when they take it, it continues. I think the answer is that it isn't forbidden at all. And the reason why it isn't forbidden is because the malacha of planting is putting something in an environment where it could develop into a plant. And even if it will break down within the bin, but plants don't develop in the bin. They won't, they're very unlikely to develop in the bin. The whole atmosphere around it is there's lack of oxygen, it's suffocated, it decomposes in the bin, it breaks down, but it doesn't become, an apple tree doesn't grow inside the bin. It doesn't, not enough time, not growing enough. I think that when they finally, eventually, I don't know, I have to look into it from a practical perspective, not from a shower side. When they eventually take out the garbage to the garbage heaps out at sea or whatever, it could be over a sustained period of time, grass starts to grow on the top of the garbage. But there's so many other chemicals in the garbage, and there's so many other bad things.
Als ik gescheiden afval heb.
Yeah, it's not inevitable though. I don't think it's. I think it's not. I think the main thing is it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable. That's the main thing. It's not inevitable.
In short,
yeah.
Are we talking about an action with an immediate result, Shabbos, or are we also talking what you planned about the action itself that would be considered as those are the two things at the moment?
Yes, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
The Zereh, you're over, you've transgressed just for the action, even without the result.
Therefore, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I live in a house where we have an elevator for Shabbos, and next to it is an elevator which is normal.
In the bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay, if the elevator for Shabbos doesn't work, I can't walk four stairs.
Ja, dat is een specifieke vraag. Dat kan gebeuren. Dat kan je niet antwoord op.
Yeah. Well, there's a Shabbos elevator and a regular elevator.
Yeah. And the regular elevator works, and the Shabbos elevator doesn't work. I live on the 4th floor.
Dan moet je
I can't
boven
walk
blijven.
for,
Are there non-Jewish people around? Are there non-Jewish people around?
Je mag bij die niet Joden, mag je boven.
Are there non-Jewish workers around?
Yes.
workers, I don't know.
Nee, dat is
Staat.
niet Joods personeel. En die kan je naar boven brengen. No problem. Dat is helemaal geen probleem.
Yeah, but I'm going to give a small clarification. If it's 5 minutes before before the end of Shabbos,
No, it's
I understand. I'm just explaining that it's permitted to ask a non-Jew to do things, to do activities, in certain circumstances, not in every circumstance. It depends on necessity. It depends on different things. In your case, in under many normal circumstances, it's highly necessary. If let's say you need to go and rest, to go back to your room to rest, or something like that. So it's a necessary thing for you to be well and healthy to rest. And therefore you can ask a non-Jew to do something, an activity for you, for something, a Shabbos goy, in the event of any kind of, we call it doesn't need to be danger to life, but like health, any kind of health measures, something to prevent you from getting weaker from that. But we don't just ask a non-Jew to do something for us for no reason, just because it's convenient. That we don't ask. In other words, if it's an hour before the end of Shabbos and you're sitting in the lobby downstairs and the Shabbos lift isn't working, but you've got all the food you need, downstairs and you can rest, and it's not going to be detrimental. It's not going to be bad for your health in any form to stay downstairs until Shabbos finishes an hour later, and socially it's fine. Then no, I don't think you should ask, because we're not just. It's not the halacha has a provision of asking a non-Jew to do an act for you in the event that it's a necessity, but only you are the one in each circumstance that can gauge the necessity. So that's an important thing. If it's necessary, yes. It doesn't need to be necessary on danger of life. We're not talking about extremes. We're talking about it's necessary for you to rest. If the food is upstairs, etc., various things for Oinek Shabbos, it could be that staying down in the lobby or whatever it is for a significant period of time on Shabbos is not pleasurable whatsoever on Shabbos. It will cause you anguish, will cause you sadness. All these reasons are good reasons why one might be allowed to ask a non-Jew or hint to the non-Jew to operate the lift for you. But if it's an hour before the end of Shabbos and you're reading the newspaper and you've got company, and then it shouldn't just be done for no reason. That's the point. The point is just there should be a necessity and not a. Right. Okay.
Okay, Koyach, thank you very much. I have a date already for you.
Yes. Good.
1 moment.
First, you should be well and healthy, Bez Hashem.
25 of March. This, I think it's